In this video, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into slope. We're going to kind of analyze what it looks like and find slope between some points. So there's 4 different kinds of looks to your slopes. So you have, if a line is kind of heading in this direction, you have a positive slope. All right, and then if your line is going down, that is a negative slope. But there are 2 other looks for this. And so let me do the 2 visuals. One of them is if you just have a horizontal line, and the other one is if you have a vertical line. Okay, so these are not like these 2. This is just a positive slope, graph goes up. This is a negative slope, graph goes down. These are kind of your special cases. So let's kind of refresh what slope is. Slope visually is rise over run. Right, so if you're going to go from here, from one point to another point, then you are kind of rising up and over. If you're going to go from the negative, from one point to another, you're going down and over. So that's where the positive is going to come from. That's where the negative is going to come from. But another way to think of slope is change in y's over change in x's. And then another way to think of it also is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to focus on these 2 for the most part. So when we have this slope, if we're going from one point to another point, okay, and let's analyze what the rise and the run would be. So if you went from here to here, you'd have 0 rise over some sort of a run. Could be a 1, could be a 2, could be anything, but it's something. Well, 0 divided by 1 is 0. So this is known as a 0 slope. And the reason I write the word 0 out is because I kind of have some horizontal pieces in the letter Z for 0. Makes a Z. So 0 slope is horizontal. And then here you have, if you're going from one point to another, you have you have all rise, but you have no run. Okay, well that one is different. You can't divide by 0, and so that one is undefined. And that's actually what this slope is called, undefined. So an undefined slope always represents a vertical line. A 0 slope always represents a horizontal line. And if it helps, it's kind of part of the end of the U. You got a vertical piece in there. Okay, so let's find some slopes. All right, so to find slope, we can absolutely plot some points, but you don't always have a graph. So mathematically, the way that you can find your slopes are, let's see, if we have our points, hold on a minute, 2, -1, 5, 3. So if I want to find slope, I can really just analyze what are the changes in your y's compared to the change in your x's. So this y value goes from a -1 to a 3. So -1 to 3 is up 4. So my change in my y's is a +4. And then my x's go from a 2 to a 5, which means we are up 3. So that's my slope, 4 over 3. If you wanted to do the formula version of this, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, you would have your second y value, which would be 3, minus your first y value, which is -1, and then my second x value minus my first x value. And I don't love this approach. It's fine. It's a formula thing, but I'd rather just count. right? From a -1 to a 3 is up 4, from a 2 to a 5 is up 3, and there's my slope. Because people get kind of jumbled up a little bit with some of the signs and everything. So you just got to make sure you're comfortable with this. That subtracting a negative is really like adding the opposite. So there's your 4, and then 5 minus 2 is your 3. Is your 3. And then we plot the points, and let's make sure. So there's two different ways to do this. By all means, formula. I like kind of just the counting process for this. So you'll see that's kind of how I approach it every time. And then we have a positive slope. So if we plot these points, -2 or 2, -1, and you plot the point 5, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, you should see that this line is going up. And it's going up at a rate of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's up 4 over 3. All right, so let's do this a little quicker. Change in your y's compared to the change in your x's. Our y's are going from a -1 to a -2, which is down 1. Your x's are going from a -5 to a +3, which is up 8. Because you got to go from a -5 to 0 and then 0 to 3. So the total distance traveled would have been 8. So our slope is a -1 over 8. And that's it. And then we'll plot our points to verify it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1. So we went left 5, down 1. And we're going to go right and then down. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then just to double check that this thing goes down 1 over, so down 1 over 8, down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. Okay, we go to another one. We're going to find the slope between these two. So change in y over change in x. We're going from a 2 to a 2, so the change in your y values is 0, and the x's change by, you're going from a 3 to a -3, which is down 6. So it's 0 over -6, which is 0. So a 0 makes a z is a horizontal line. So we have up or to the right, 1, 2, 3, up 2. And we're 1, 2, 3, back up 2. So if we plot those 2 points, we in fact see our horizontal line. All right, last one of these is change in our y's, change in our x's. So 2 to a -2 is down 4, and 3 to 3 is no change. So our y's are down 4, our x's are 0. So that is an undefined slope. So when they ask, what is the slope? Your answer is actually undefined. Can't divide by 0, but visually it makes a vertical line. So we're at 3, 2 for this one, 3, -2 for this one, and it makes a vertical line. All right. And then we got one more last kind of, well, we have a word problem on this, but a fancier way, more of a word problem way, is when you see a word problem and they're going to talk about something related to slope, they won't call it a slope. They're going to call it a rate of change, an average rate of change. Also means slope. So anytime you see a word problem, they probably won't call it a slope. They're going to say, what is the average rate of change? AKA, what is the slope? So it says in 2006, the annual cost of tuition and fees for a 2-year college was $25.84. And then in 2012, the price was $3,076. So what is the average rate of change in fees from 2006? So you have a 6-year span and then the price changed. So you could really look at it as coordinates. In 2006, the price was $25.84. And in 2012, the price was $3,076. All right, so if we're going to do slope, we're going to do change in y's divided by the change in x's. So we're trying to find the difference between these two. So if you subtract these two, so if you take, and the order doesn't matter, just realize that it is going up. So even if you take this value minus this value, you're going to get a negative, but you shouldn't get a negative because your values are going up by a certain amount. But basically take the second number minus the first number and that'll get you the right one. So if you subtract these two, it goes, the difference is $492. Okay, so it went up $492. And then our change in our x's, which is our time, we changed by 6 years. So then we're dividing by 6 years. So if you divide this, the average rate of change is not going to leave it over 6. It just divides it in, whether it goes in evenly or not. If you have to put a decimals, you go to decimals. So 492 divided by 6 ends up equaling $82 per year. So you have an increase roughly of $82 per year based on this information. All right. And that was kind of visually doing some slope, talking about the 2 special cases of slope, and then throwing in a word problem. And the word problem is pull your information out, try to get some coordinates out of it. Time is typically an x value. The other value is typically your y value. And then you can find your slopes with that.